Welcome, movie men, for the continuation of our perfect movie quest. It's been a month because we've got some East Coasters that were affected by the hurricane. So we're all back now. We've got internet connection, we've got technology, we've got each other, we've got our health. We're super grateful for all of that. And now, finally, after weeks and weeks of waiting, we get to discuss the perfect movie that Brownie nominated. I should say, the movie that's been nominated for perfection by Brownie, 1917. And to kick this off, I want Brownie to just take 5 to 10 minutes and explain why he chose this movie, make his case for its perfection, highlight some standout moments that really made the hair on his arm stand up. And then from there, we'll start hashing it out amongst the rest of us. When there's like 10 minutes left of this phone call, I'm going to just put a stop to the conversation and then we'll cast our votes. All right. So, Brownie, take it away.
Yeah. To give a little bit of backstory, I found myself on a war movie kick a while ago, and I stumbled upon 1917. So it was a really pleasant surprise to stumble upon it. I was really blown away by it. It really caught me off guard, especially as I was in that, war movie kick. I was just war movie after war movie after war movie. So I felt like I was getting like a good grasp of flaws in other movies. And this one was just, again, it blew me away. I mean, where do I begin? I feel like, as far as war movies are concerned, I felt like this is rewatchable. I've probably rewatched this movie at least 6 times already, from that first, date that I saw it. In my opinion, it's girlfriend/wife worthy. It's action packed, but it's not so action packed or so gruesome that they're sitting there getting grossed out and don't just want to step back and watch something a little bit lighter. Character development I thought was just absolutely incredible. The relationship that you see between the 2 main characters, and I apologize, their names actually leave me right now, but the 2 main characters, their character development and what they go through and learning their backstory and their habits. Boy, I felt like they painted such a good picture. The way the movie starts off, they jump right into it. And I don't feel like there was ever a moment in that movie where I was, where I felt bored or felt like the story needed to move along. And I feel like this goes without saying, but the the way the film was shot was just masterful, just absolutely beautiful. It seems as though it's just one take the entire movie. And after watching it 6 times, I finally started to pick up on where they were cutting scenes and throwing the new scene in. But again, that took me 6 times to finally catch all the new times that they cut the scene and began a new scene. And I just thought that was just beautiful. It was, for me personally, that was my first time ever seeing a film that way. Now, some just highlight scenes that really took me back. The one that stands out the most is when Schofield, as he's running and he falls into the river, and it's this intense scene. It's been an intense scene for probably the past 15 minutes, and he falls into the river. You see him just floating on his back, and you see the cherry blossoms falling down all around him, and you catch this moment of peace. And I found myself kind of taking a breath and being like, whoa, okay, we're finally out of this. And then as he continues floating down, you almost feel like you've forgotten about the whole thing that he just went through. And then all of a sudden, as he gets closer to the bank, it's just dead bodies floating all over the river. And then your mind just, switches and goes, oh crap, yeah, we're still in this. He is still in this. And the mixture that they did there with the peace and the beauty and having the war be all around that, I thought was just an absolutely beautiful scene. Again, I was blown away by it, as well as the casting. There were some heavy hitters in that movie, and a lot of them played really minimal roles. And I actually really appreciate that in movies, is when you get heavy hitters come in there and they are only on there for maybe 10 minutes max, but they played an awesome part. So again, for me, it was a perfect movie, and that's all I got.
Awesome. All right, let's hash this out. If you guys would indulge me, I would love to, like, I'm chomping at the bit right now. Spoiler alert, this is absolutely a perfect movie in my opinion. That's my vote. And so don't expect any negativity from me. The first time I ever saw the one shot camera trick was Birdman. And I think Birdman was the first movie to do it, at least mainstream movie, as far as I'm aware. Wasn't really a fan with Michael Keaton. I don't even know the year. I think it won an Academy Award or something just because of how creative it was shot, but the story wasn't that compelling. It wasn't that. So the idea that they took that style of a one-shot take and applied it to an actually interesting story with actually interesting characters. I remember sitting down in the theater, I wasn't like, oh, I heard that this was a one-shot movie. It took me like 8 minutes probably before I was like, there hasn't been a break in the camera. And then I started paying attention. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're actually doing this. This is an actual one take type movie. And in my sweet, innocent, adorable naivete, I thought that these actors like acted 2 hours straight and like perfected the whole movie in one shot. And I was like blown away. I remember walking out of the theater being like, that is the most masterful crafting of a movie I've ever seen in my life. So if I forget about the story and forget about the acting and all the other elements that make a movie great, I was like, what if he tripped in that last scene walking to the tree and they had to start all over? You know what I mean? Like, there's the obvious break in the middle when he passes out on the stairs, but I thought that the movie was taken in two shots. I was like, this is the most incredible thing I've ever seen. Of course, I pull up IMDb trivia, read about it, and it turns out that it's just tricks. And so then, like Brownie just said, on rewatching, now I'm looking for the little moments where the camera pans past his backpack and it's black for an instant, and then it continues panning, and you're like, right there. That's where they broke. And so it's kind of fun as an audience member to try to figure out the movie magic on how they made that. But also, setting all that aside, the style of shooting this type of movie in that way takes you into an immersive state of storytelling that no other style of like cinematography will do. And different styles have different places for different moods and different type of movies and whatever. But if you're going on a journey with two soldiers in World War I in trench warfare, this is the way to do it. One shot take the entire time. You know what? I've seen this movie 3 times now. I saw it in theaters. I watched it with my wife, Natalie, and we fell asleep about halfway through. So I didn't even finish it, unfortunately. So this third time watching it, I watched it all the way through on my high-def TV with a booming sound bar. And it was almost better than the theater, because not only was I looking for the camera tricks and the movie magic, I was giving myself to the movie in such a way that and again, it's so immersive and it's so smooth in storytelling. And like Brownie said, the pacing was perfect that I was just so into it. So many times the hairs on my arms stood up. So many times I got chills. It was an amazing immersive experience. And this third time watching it, I'll just finish by saying this. My third time watching it, I walked away, and I didn't even think about this when I saw it in theaters, but this last time watching it, I really do think it is the best war movie ever made. That's a bold statement, and feel free to push back. Previously, it was Saving Private Ryan, and obviously Saving Private Ryan is still up there for me, but I could talk about this forever. One little piece, and I'll pass it to Justin. That death scene of Blake, when Schofield has him in his arms, up until seeing that, the most realistic deaths I've seen in a movie, especially a war movie, was Saving Private Ryan. At the beginning in the Beach of Normandy, when the kid's trying to put his guts back in and he's calling out for his mom, that's heart-wrenching. And that is so, like, it's so visceral and gory and uncomfortable and icky that you're just like, that is so realistic. Like, that boy's probably 17 years old. You know, he probably lied to get into the army, and then he just gets sawed down the moment that plank drops. Like, so visceral, so, like, I don't know, soul gripping. And then also at the end, when the Nazis like slowly pushing the knife into that guy's chest, and he's just like, shh, shh, shh. And he's like, no, 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 no. And he, like, the knife slowly goes into his chest. Up until 1917, those were the most realistic deaths I've seen in war movies. This movie, when Blake was dying and you literally see his face turning white as the blood is draining out of his body, and as he's being delirious, like you would if you're losing a lot of blood, like, it was the most realistic, most gripping. And the fact that there was no music, it was silent, and they're in a field. Like, I couldn't believe how real and how visceral this death was on screen. And I'll just mention, like, how his mind was going crazy. He's just like, where his eyes roll back, and then he's like, was I shot? And he was just stabbed. And you're like, oh, he's losing it. And then he looks up at Schofield, and he's like, and his voice trembles. He's like, am I dying? Like, I've never experienced something like that from a movie where it was so real. Like, that is what would happen if you had time to think about your death after you've been stabbed. What Blake went through is what a real human, especially a young boy of 18, 19 years old, would go through when he's realizing, when it dawns on him, he's actually dying. That doesn't happen in movies very often. Anyway, best war movie ever. Perfect movie. Justin, take it away.
You have to remember that actual real deaths in movies, when you get shot in the abdomen, you just die and you just go, ah, and then you're dead in about 2.6 seconds. So that's the real deaths of movies. Okay. None of this realism crap. I'll have you know that I watched this on my 65-inch screen monitor. Okay. In my living room, and I did it in one take. How about that? And I don't even think I got up to use the bathroom or paused. I might have had to pause once, you know, but I already knew that it was a one take movie, and the only one that came to my mind is Serenity. 2005 is the first scene is a one take, and what they do is they go down the stairs, and there's like this cut of blackness, and so I was already prepared for that kind of thing, and so I was noticing it all the way, but at the same time it didn't really detract from the movie, and it just made it more interesting to me. I also wouldn't want to categorize this as putting World War I as a separate thing than World War II movies, because the technology is different, the atmosphere is different, the stakes are different. And so I would classify this more as the best World War I movie of all time. And that way you can keep the two separate, and you could still have, you know, both of them. I also was trying to think of how many other movies are portraying World War I. I believe Wonder Woman was World War I in the trenches, but that was a little bit more stylized than this. Great scene, but the other one is, I think, Alan may know this, Flyboys. Wasn't that World War I where the Americans go over? Great, also a great movie, but that was more like flying and a great movie, but completely different than this one. Was so immersive. You felt like you were there as the cameraman the whole time, but it was like steady cam. So you didn't feel the, as my wife kind of calls it, like she gets motion sickness, like Cloverfield, those type of movies where you're just shaking too much. This felt so smooth, and you just wonder, all right, now I know that was a transition, but it felt like they were on this huge sound stage, and that all of these locations were side by side. My favorite, when I look at the movie in my brain, the most visceral scene to me is the flare guns going off, and it gets black, and then it's bright, and then there's enemies, and he has to run, and then it goes black again, and he has to run again, and then it was like, oh, there's the bad guy, and he's running every which way. That to me, the cinematography, the sound, and the one-shot cinematography all worked. There was nothing lacking in the entire movie.
So I'll say it like this. This movie actually had 3 main characters. It had Blake, it had Schofield, and you. That's what made this movie so freaking awesome, is that it brought you along with it the entire time. And just like Brownie said something, I don't know if you even realized it, but when he was like,
Alan, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to cut you off real quick, because this is going to contextualize the whole rest of the conversation. Who is this the first time watching the movie? Who here was the first time viewing? Chase, Justin, Alan, you had seen it before?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So it's just Alan, or I'm sorry, Chase and Justin were the first timers. Okay, good to know. Sorry, Alan, didn't mean to cut you off. I was just again, this contextualizes the whole rest of the conversation, but continue.
Yeah, good point. But Brownie kind of said it, and I don't know if he did it on purpose or if he caught it, but when he was talking about the floating in the water, and then he says, "Oh, we're not out of this yet." I was like, that's it. That is the whole concept of this movie, is that you're in the movie with them. And that's one of the reasons why I think this movie is also really up there. There was, okay, I have one thing to say, and then I'll pause, but it's really this. There's a scene that stands out to me more than any other in this movie. Excuse me. And it's you'll remember when Blake is chastising Schofield about trading in his metal for wine. Do you guys remember that scene? And Schofield says something along the lines of, "Look, it's just a piece of bloody tin. It doesn't make you special. It doesn't make any difference to anybody." And Blake responds with, "Yes, it does. And it's just not a bit of tin. It's also got a ribbon on it." Right. He kind of brushes it off with, a little bit of jovialness, and then they move on. And what I love about this scene, as with most of this movie, is that it completely captures an element of military life that most people don't really think about or even understand very well. Yeah, it's a great scene. It's kind of funny. It comes back later in the film. But what it does is it captures a feeling that I personally have felt and experienced with fellow service members. There's a Medal of Honor recipient on record reflecting on what that award, the Medal of Honor, meant to him as a memento of effectively the worst day of his life. So you think about that. The most prestigious award in the United States military is reduced to effectively a reminder of the absolutely worst thing that could possibly happen to you. And that's kind of what Schofield is talking about. And I can attest to this a little bit as an officer in the military, that awards mean almost nothing. They hold zero weight for promotion, especially for officers. There's no monetary value. I've never met anyone that was like, "Hey, look at this award I got." And the higher the prestige a medal gets, the worse the circumstances surrounding that medal. And so at best, your awards, your ribbon rack simply fills in the narrative of your military career. It helps tell the story of where you've been and what you've done. That's the best case scenario. But at worst, it reminds you of heartache, loss, failure, disappointment, the worst days of your life, and yet we call them awards. So what I've actually found is that the best award that I could ever give to a man in the military is respect. The best award I could ever give a woman in the military is trust. And those two things are infinitely more difficult to earn than any award any military could present to their service members. And those two things are infinitely more valuable than a memento of a single act on a specific day, or a successful completion of a difficult task or deployment or tour duty or whatever. What I love about this movie is that it powerfully captures a narrative which is true to life and is filmed in such a way that it literally takes you along for the ride on one of the most epic and intense experiences that I've ever seen in a film. So this is kind of like the overwhelming conclusion that Becky and I had when we walked out of the theater the first time we saw it, was like, oh my gosh, like I am physically exhausted. I am tired because I feel like I just went through all of that with Schofield. I loved it. I'll stop talking.
That was the best pitch for anybody to join the military I think I've ever heard. Sign me up. Alan just made it sound cool.
You're too old Too old to begin the training.
So as a first timer, right, I knew it was a World War I movie. I was kind of dreading going into it, not because it would be a bad movie. It's more that right, like war movies are heavy, right, and they take an emotional toll. And I knew this wasn't like a happy war movie. This was going to be a serious war movie, kind of reflecting and going through the treachery of World War One, trench warfare. So I walked in, and I had read a lot of things about it being one shot, and kind of had perused in this, when it came out. And I had perused and looked, and okay, it's not an entire one shot, but there's huge long segments. And so when I was watching it, I was trying to pay attention and going, okay, where can I notice a break? And working with Sterling on a lot of film stuff, I can usually capture pretty clever cuts and things like that. But watching it, you watch an hour and 5-6 minutes of, if there were cuts in there, they were masterfully placed, because the first hour and 6 minutes appears to be a single shot, and it's them sitting at a tree, and that guy walking up and going, Blake, grab somebody, come with me. And he grabs Schofield, and they walk into the trench. They meet with the general. Oh, Drew, did you say something?
Because we're talking, I don't want to derail you too much, but does anybody know how many breaks there were?
34.
There were 34. Way more than I thought.
Right. Yeah.
Because I counted.
And I think I thought it was more like 10, 12, a third of that. So props to them, because I was like, oh, I can see how you did that. But other times when they're going to like fields, you're like, how do you just go? Because it's like, how Star Wars is, you have the three elements, you have space, and then you have Hoth, and you have the three environments. I mean, every other scene, you're in a completely different environment. It's raining, it's not, water, nighttime, daytime. It's all seamless.
Yeah. And again, I think that and I got that number from IMDb. So whether or not it's accurate, right? I assume it is, but I don't know. But yeah, it was a technical masterpiece in terms of filmmaking. Because again, as I was watching it, I didn't notice a cut until that hour 5, hour 6 mark. And it's them getting woken up from their nap on the tree, into the trench, to the general. The general gives them an order. They walk through the trenches. They go to no man's land. They cross no man's land into the German trenches, right? And no man's land, the set pieces there, like there was the major who gave him the flare gun, and he's like, hey, if you don't make it, like if you get shot right as you cross over, throw it back in, because I don't want the Germans to have this. But and then they go, watch out for the pits. If you fall in, you can't get out. And I was like, really? And as they're walking, you notice like some little pits until you get to the big pit, and you're like, oh yeah, if you fell into that, you aren't getting out because of the mud and the rain and all that. I'm like, you wouldn't be able to get out. And even
Chase, really quick, I'm so sorry to derail you on that one. That was another point that I read up on as well, is when he said that, because then you go in there and you're like, oh yeah, it was really big, but like you could easily get out of that, right? But then I started reading up on it, and what had happened is soldiers would jump into the water, and they would sink so far down into the water that they would get stuck, and then they would struggle and then get fatigued and then just die. They would die in those mud pits, or like, people would come up and come shoot them. But that's how they'd get stuck into those big ditches. Anyway, sorry to derail you.
Yeah.
Well, since we're already derailed anyway, just remember that these are the type of scenarios that led J.R.R. Tolkien to write Lord of the Rings. These are the trenches. These are the moments. This is the like
Where
the
when he's
despair.
writing about what is it, Kazakh Doom, and how the trees hated what war had done to their lands, something like that. Yeah, it's well, and even the like the little things when the major's giving him directions on how to get there, he said it all so fast that I didn't really catch it until they're walking through, because he's like, oh, you'll come across a horse with its guts out, and then you'll come across a man who's like this, right, bowing, and then right, whatever, and you're like, but then as they're going, you're like, oh, okay, there's the horse. Oh, it's a guy like falling over barbed wire who's shot and is just right. And anyways, and they make it to the German trench. They walk all the way through the German trenches, through through their like not barracks, but like their sleeping quarters that they had booby trapped, which, you know, again, when you talk about the technicality, having the timing, having the explosions, all the things that they have to make sure happen at the right time with the actors. And you know, I'm going, how much of these actors was it actually scripted versus they were given a premise and they were allowed to ad lib? Right. I'm sure there were like specific things that they had to say. And in a one shot, there are ways you can put up cue cards in places that the camera's not going to catch so that you have reference for your lines or whatever. But they make it through the German trenches, out of the German trenches to the what is it? Seville? Was that the town? And there's the whole plane and everything. And it's not until he gets, oh no, that was the Prairie House. But then he gets to the town and he's shot and he blacks out. And I'm like, okay, that's the clear cut. And so without noticing that there were probably a dozen cuts that had happened, I was like, the technicality of having actors, the timing, the pacing, the explosions, the set pieces, everything timed perfectly, because you don't see him like hesitate for something to happen. It was all incredibly natural. So yeah, just from a technicality perspective, this was a masterpiece to watch. I thoroughly enjoyed it. The one thing that I was curious about, and again, I don't know if a World War I German pilot would have, are they called trench knives, the triangles, the ones that we're no longer allowed to use, because when you stab them, you're just dead. You can't right with a normal knife where it's flat. If you stab, you can hold it and hopefully get medical attention or whatever. But those trench knives where they were triangle shaped and it just punctures a hole in you and you're dead. And that, to me, I was like, that's probably what happened with Blake, because he died really quickly. And Bo, I know you've been critical of movies where somebody's shot or stabbed in the gut and they live and they keep going and all this stuff. Blake was stabbed in the gut and he died pretty quick. Like, you know, it was 2-3 minutes, which maybe is a long time, but to me, it seemed really quick.
Yeah,
anyway.
Chase, honestly, I thought that it was so long because, like Justin said earlier, I'm so used to movies like somebody gets shot and then they're dead, or somebody gets punched and they pass out. Like in movies, it's always instantaneous. The fact that scene lasted, like you said, 2 or 3 minutes, I was like, this is an eternity, and it's torturous to watch because of how realistic it was. The whole conversation they had, the hopelessness on the look of Schofield's face when he realizes, and he's like, am I dying? And he just tells him straight up, yeah, like, what are you going to do? Lie to him at that point? And yeah, I thought that
and
it was
no morphine to give him, right? Like, I know in World War II, they would give morphine so that it sucked a little bit less. Yeah.
And even when he goes to put pressure on the wound, and you just see him just freak out. He's just like, no. It's like, oh my gosh. You know, you just don't think about that. You think you're probably just in so much pain. If somebody put pressure on you, you know, you'd be able to bear it, but no. And then like he tried to get him up to move him and he screams even more. Man, it was just uncomfortable.
Yeah. And Brownie, to your point on the cherry blossoms, right? Because they walked through the little cherry orchard, and Blake was talking about the different cherry trees and all this stuff. To me, when Schofield's floating down the river, he almost drowns, right? Like he's holding onto the log and his head kind of dips under and for a second, and then he kind of sputters and I looked at that as he's done. Like he can't go on. He's been up for 18 hours, whatever, trudging on. He got exploded on, right? He was blown up. He had, a guy who he really cared about die. He was pissed at that he had to go on this mission, right? They had that whole exchange. Why'd you even pick me? He goes, because I thought we were going to like go get food or whatever. He goes, I didn't know this is what we were going to do. But for me, I'm like, when he was in the river floating, I'm like, this guy's done. Like he can't go another step further. And to me, I'm like, when those cherry blossoms started, to me, I go, that was the reinvigoration, right, of the reminder of Blake, that of the conversation they had hours before to finish the mission. That wasn't Schofield's, it was Blake's. And so to me, I was like, that was, anyways, that was my mindset. But yeah, technical masterpiece. Alan mentioned in the chat, and right, I wanted to bring up as well, one of the other really great World War I movies that's out there is All Quiet on the Western Front, and they've remade it twice. So it was done once in like the 1930s, I believe, and then it was done in the 1970s. And I watched that one in high school, and then they just recently, in the last handful of years, remade it again. But that is also a classic World War I movie that kind of captures the horror of trench warfare and what it was like. And yeah, I think World War II, World War I are two just terribly different types of terror that you can't really compare because they're both like horrific. But anyways,
differences. Chase, were there big differences in the 1970s version and the 2020 version, or whatever, which one?
I don't know. I haven't seen the newest one.
Oh, you haven't seen the newest one. I'm sorry, I thought so. Well, what? Go ahead.
I'm working on getting a copy and so I can watch it.
Nice. Well, I was gonna say something while you were talking about the like the discomfort scenes, and something that I had written down is they gave us all just like micro memories of discomfort, of their like massive discomforts. Obviously not the death one, but like we've all like pulled a hangnail from our big toe, and like you kind of let out a pain scream, and you're like, no, and you're like, oh man, this just sucks. Like this really hurts. Like I micro emotion of being stabbed. And then like when the claymore goes off and he like gets pulled up and he's like, and it's just filled with dirt and dust. We've all experienced like our face in the sand, and like you're just kind of like, and he had this massive amount of dust in his mouth. Like there's only been a few scenes in cinematic history that I can think of that water, like when he finally got the canteen of water and was just able to clean out his mouth, I'm like, man, water has never looked so good. And there's been a lot of scenes that make water look good, and that's one of them for sure.
That one, and Three Amigos.
Yeah, right. We all experienced that with Three Amigos when he does. Classic.
Hey, Drew, I'll let you continue, but if I could just add to what you just said, the scene where he like cuts his hand on the bar.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah,
that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah,
and then he puts his hand in the.
Exactly. He accidentally puts his hand in the open wound of the corpse, and the look on his face is so relatable where he's like, damn it. Like, it's like, I can't believe that happened. Like, can my luck get any worse? I love that part because we all feel that. Like Alan said, we're the third main character in the movie, and you're just like, infection, dude. Like you are infected now. Like that is so gross. But we all felt it. Like the acting of both those main characters was phenomenal.
Like, or what about the milk? Like the milk pail? That one also, I was like, milk looked really good. And then I loved how they were able to play it in later as this kind of like benefit that he had filled his canteen with milk.
And Chase, I read up on that. That was a true story. That really happened.
Oh,
There was
really?
a soldier, yeah, there was a soldier. I mean, the whole thing's based off of actual events, but that actually happened. The whole milk scene, and he found a woman with a baby, gave her the canteen.
So apparently, so Sam Mendes directed the film. Apparently, this is kind of based off of either his grandfather or his great grandfather, their experience during World War One. So it's all right. Obviously, took some artistic liberties on how he was going to tell the story, but I think it's based on like actual events, or you know, again, you're going to dramatize and make it movie worthy. But yeah, so that's interesting that story they were able to incorporate it as well.
Yeah, it's really good. The other thing I wanted to touch on that I really appreciate. I mean, everything you guys have said, I would second and third and fourth everything. But the something that I was watching for was like the camera work, because I'm sure they have better rigs now. They have like the non-motion rigs, but like when in my younger years, when we would watch like the special features, there would be like this railroad track almost, and that's what they would pull back on. I don't know if they still use it, or I imagine they do, but like like when they're going through the trenches, or when they're doing big, long, snaky scenes, I was like glancing at the ground to see if there was like imprints in the grass of like the railroad tracks, and it made the movie just kind of so much fun to try and figure out. And what I just realized is when Chase was like, there's 32 cuts in it, I was like, never mind. I don't want to know the movie magic. I want it to live up here for free and just keep me wandering. I want my suspension of disbelief to say, nah, there was only three cuts in that whole movie.
Drew, the one that I was really looking for is when they were in the crater on the German side, and they're walking through the water, and the camera was so low to the water line, watching them cross through. I was like, show me a ripple of where the cameraman is. But they probably had it hanging. I mean, you can see some of the behind the scenes of the like trucks and right the gable work and all of that stuff. But man, that one, I'm like, you are this far away from the water. Where is the ripple or a reflection?
And if you touch it, if you touch the water, we have to redo this whole scene.
Start over, 45 minutes, restart.
It's crazy.
Well, it's interesting.
Or how about the scene?
Oh, go ahead, Brownie.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, how about the scene where he gets out of the bunker and runs across the grass field, and he's got people running across that collision that he does with somebody that wasn't supposed to happen.
There were two of them.
There was two of them. Yeah. And they weren't supposed to happen. And the director just kept on running. And the guy just kept on running. I mean, talk about a scene, man. That was just.
There are some, and I can't think. Usually, I'm able to think of things off the top of my head, but I can't think of any right now. But there are movies where you see the movie magic and it ruins it. This one is so well done because you're looking for the movie magic, and it's so well crafted you can't find it. That's one thing I was telling Natalie watching it this time is she was like, do you ever watch people in the background to see what they're doing? I'm like, all the time. I'm always looking to see if extras are like messing things up or like doing their, like, I don't look at the main character. A lot of times I'm looking at the background characters. In this movie, whoever you're looking at is like giving an Oscar-worthy performance. Like the extra way back and is blurry in the background, giving his all when it comes to acting like he's injured or acting like he's missing a leg or whatever he was doing. How about that singing scene, by the way? Don't mean to derail Drew too much, but just even that singing scene where all the like soldiers are just sitting there, it goes along with like the rest. The pacing of this movie, like it allows you to rest a couple times, like Brownie illustrated, but also the scene where he's like leaning his head against the tree as you're listening to this beautiful song sung by a soldier and all these other soldiers sitting around. I was looking at everybody except the main character and the singer. I was looking at everybody. They were all giving just masterful performances. This movie's so well made. It's incredible. Anyway,
yet they didn't linger on it. They only gave you enough for you to feel this much comfortable. But in the back of your head, you're like, we haven't fulfilled this mission yet. Like, rest now, sweet child, because we still have a long road ahead of us. And like, that's how you feel. And I think Alan mentioned it. I feel like I was holding my breath the entire movie. Like I had lower back sweat and like lower back pain because I was so tense and stiff at the end of this movie. And I loved it. You know, it's just a tribute to how good the movie is.
Well,
Hey,
since
we-
we're
Oh, go
since
ahead.
we're doing so good on this movie, I'm gonna put some caveats, some black eyes to this movie. At least somebody has to. So number one, how in the heck did that German pilot land in the barn with the milk at the same time? Come on here. And why is it that every time that you're trying to help the other side, they stab you literally when you're trying to help them? It's like a trope. Okay. And then
Here's
in the first like scene, you don't care about them. You don't care about their plight. It's not until later on that you kind of care. And so those are just a few of the many things
I
that
think they did that on purpose. They made it so like you almost didn't want to go with them. When they were like, you have to deliver this letter, you're like, that sounds boring. I want to get in a gunfight. And then they like, I'm like, I don't want to walk around with like this pudgy soldier, like with this stupid mission. Do we have to go on this mission? Dang it. And then you're thrown in and you're like in love with these characters and you're there with those characters and you would give your life for these characters. If
Well,
you were
that goes back to what Brownie said at the very beginning, the character development, which when he said that, I was like, didn't really consider character development to be one of the hallmarks of this movie. But to your point, Drew, what you just said, that illustrates that because I remember seeing it in the theater and thinking the exact same thing. I was like, why am I invested in these characters? Like the cameras fall. Oh, it's a one shot. Like that was the first time I was impressed in the movie. I was like, oh, it's a one shot kind of movie. That's kind of cool. And then when they received their mission, I'm just like, all right, this is kind of interesting. I'll play along. And then the conversation they have in like the next 5 to 7 minutes establishes their friendship, establishes their character, establishes their motive, establishes their personalities, like character development in the most efficient way possible. Again, going back to the crafting of this movie, I appreciate you pointing that out at the beginning, Brownie, because the more I think about it, the more I do think that it's a masterclass on how to develop characters in the most efficient manner possible, because one of the main characters dies relatively early in the movie, and that wouldn't have as much of an impact if they hadn't built his character, if they haven't developed it to the point where you actually cared at that moment. So both of you guys, I couldn't agree more. I thought that was a perfect illustration of.
So the director of photography for the movie stated there were 48 edits, not 36. Which
Even more impressive.
I know.
Don't tell me that. Don't tell me that.
Well, I just want to be accurate
There was only
because somebody,
20.
some nerd's gonna fact check our YouTube video and be like, actually there were 48 edits, and I just want to say one other thing that I really appreciated was, so you had Mark Strong's character was he like a major who showed up, like he was in the Jeep convoy, not Jeep, but the automobile convoy that they were doing, and the piece of advice that he gave to Schofield, where he's like, I know what you have like to do. Make sure there are witnesses. And he kind of looks at him and he goes, because there are some people who just want the fight. And I know we've talked like as a group about kind of how, politicians, man, they love war, and right, it's a huge moneymaker for them. And you even have you have military leaders who want war. They want something that they can go, I was part of that. I led the, whatever. I mean, you can have like A Few Good Men with Jack Nicholson's character, where it's like, I'm just going to do what I got to do. And, I'm going to move the ball forward. And I think Mark Strong gave him really sound, like wise advice, to have witnesses, so that when he tells him that the general had ordered him to stop with the movement, he could be held accountable had he rejected the advice. Right. And, and I there's so much like anti-war everything. I always think about a Black Sabbath song, War Pigs, and it's like generals don't fight in wars. They send that, like, that's the job for poor people. And there are just people who don't care that lives are lost. And anyways, so it was just it was a very like profound moment when Mark Strong's character kind of just stops and goes, make sure you have witnesses, because some people just want to fight. And right. And then ultimately he does. He tells the colonel with like 5 or 6 other people, and that major, the pudgy major in his little group, right, kind of pulled him aside and was like you did the right thing. Like, thank you for making sure that this, happened or whatever. And anyways, that was just like another little nugget that I really appreciated while watching the movie.
Well, Chase, you touched on something that I was going to say when I was glitching out, and that's I don't want to get political here, but just everybody here knows, like, I'm libertarian, anti-war, like anti-intervention, all this stuff. And so it's some people might think, like, if I didn't know me, I would look at me, if I just knew my politics, and be like, well, why do you enjoy a movie like this? It's about war and you're anti-war. What I love about movies like this is that even though in my personal political view, World War I was an absolute disaster, never should have happened, so many lives wasted, it was a complete bogus war for bogus reasons, for reasons we can't get into here. But what I love about World War I, World War II, even like the war in the Middle East in the past 20 years, I love individual stories of triumph or individual stories of adversity. Like that, like my political views of being so anti-war has nothing to do with my ability to appreciate the individuals, boots on the ground, who have these experiences. One thing that Natalie and I said when this movie ended, this last rewatching of it, was I was like, because it said dedicated to so-and-so, of whatever infantry or whatever. And I'm just like, we weren't filming war until Vietnam. So like World War I, World War II, these are just oral histories. Like the fact that there were soldiers that lived through crap like this, that we're reimagining with like all the, technicality of modern day movie making magic. People actually lived through crap like this. And that to me is just so fat. Like the fact, can you imagine, okay, be Schofield and he goes home after the war. Who's going to believe that story? And how is he going to remember all the details? They literally just lived these life or death adventures, millions of them. There are millions of stories from World War I that we will never hear of, just like this movie that we watched. And to me, that's mind blowing. So again, that was another props to this movie. And did like the realism when the bomb goes off, or when the rat drops before the bomb goes off, and you just hear him go, no, like that's so realistic, Like I would say that if I was in that situation. He's running toward the wire, like in a panic. You're just like, no, like there's nothing manly, there's nothing heroic about it at that point. You're just trying to live. These are boys trying to live in the most horrific, hellish circumstances imaginable. They're just trying to live. I mean, this movie just illustrated that like to the nth degree, on the next level. Best war movie I think I've ever seen in my life. That being said, let's cast our votes. You guys ready? Brownie, I've already said mine. I vote this is a perfect movie. Justin.
I'm just neutral. Just kidding.
You scoundrel.
I just love seeing your faces. I was on the fence. Because unfortunately for me, I saw this early on, and then I just didn't have time to watch it again. But I was like, I'll probably make up my mind. And about 5-10 minutes, I just recalled everything that you said, Brownie, about all of the scenes, and then just recalling all of it. Absolutely a perfect movie because of how much visceral, you can always recall where you were in a movie and what your feelings were after the fact. And you can go back every time you watch the movie. That to me is a sign. So perfect movie.
Chase, cast your vote.
I vote that it is a perfect movie. It might be missing some of the like nitnoid details that we've identified, right? Again, as I said, it's a heavy movie. And so it's not one of those things where I watched it last week, I could watch it again 2 days later. Right, I know that that's not the purpose of this movie. If in a year somebody was like, oh, I haven't seen 1917, I'd be like, let's watch it. Like, it is a rewatchable movie. I wanted to say there's like some really good, like, quotable moments. I think the kind of not the funny story that he told about the guy whose ear got chewed off because he had olive oil like hair gel or shampoo, whatever, and the rat chewed off his ear instead of it getting shot off, right? Like that's a kind of like funny story, but like not necessarily like super requotable, but just from a technicality perspective, this was a delightful movie to watch, to be part of. And the story was intriguing. It was compelling. It made me feel a lot of emotions. And you know, Bo, to your point, right? This just highlighted the heroism that I think existed in a lot of these, like, and you might even say like Blake might have been 17, because there were a lot of 16, 17-year-olds who lied about their age to get into World War I as well. And so like he might have been like a 17-year-old kid. And right. And you know, I go, man, I know 17-year-olds today, and for them to go and do the things that these, like that silent generation did, like it's stark differences in the character and the chutzpah that exists between men then and men today. So right, I just incredibly appreciated it, and this just helps me empathize and have more compassion for people who, you know, lived through that, but also in our time lived through, you know, war, which it's different, but same. So yeah, I vote yes.
I don't know why we keep choosing these super duper heavy hitting, right in the feels movies for these perfect movie nominations, which makes it harder for the rewatchable piece. But I love this movie. I think it's super awesome. So Brownie, thank you so much for recommending it. It is a delight, and I think that this is a perfect movie.
Same. I was actually also on the fence. I had only seen it once before, and when Brownie announced it, I was like, oh man, like I don't think it is. I don't remember. And I think I was just traumatized by the movie, and so I forgot a lot of it, and including the really good parts. But on the second watch, and then this is a good example of a movie that doesn't need to hit the. I know, like when we made the list of perfect movies, we're like, it doesn't mean they have to check all these boxes, because this one is really hard when it comes to like an instant rewatchable, and also like I mean, depending on how recently I'd watched it, if it came on in a hotel, would I drop the remote? Ugh. I mean, if I watched it last night, probably not. I'd be like, oh man, I don't know if I can go through that again. It's just such a ride. And but that's why it makes it a perfect movie in my opinion. So looks like no extra votes needed. That's 6 out of 8. So yeah.
Just to tag on to what you said, Drew, remember that the criteria for a perfect movie, it is more guardrails than it is requirements. So
Right.
I think we discussed this on our first conversation. If a movie checks like 90% of those, like that's probably a perfect movie. Like, these are just guidelines to keep our expectations kind of in the same realm, but it doesn't have to hit every single, like I'm the same way. This isn't a remote drop movie for me. As a matter of fact, it's hey, let's rewind and start from the beginning because I want to watch the whole thing. For me, and it's probably not a girlfriend wife move because Natalie was pretty heavily checked out. I shouldn't say checked out, but it was heavy for her. It was heavy for me. It's a heavy movie.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, wouldn't that have been nice, Justin, if they had the same mindset for first night? And
Yeah.
and here we are. Oh, we can bend the rules for 1917 for Brownie because he's my college friend.
Okay.
I have to jump in really quick because Bo just said something that I'm going to counter. And since we've been doing this, I've watched every movie with Becky. And that's kind of my litmus test, because I know that I have a style and I have a preference, and Becky doesn't share that most of the time. But every single one of these movies that we've put forward as a perfect movie so far, well, she's agreed with me at least. And because she's like, I wouldn't put First Night as a perfect movie, but that's her own thing. That's all right. We discussed that. Sorry, Justin. But for this same movie,
You can be wrong for eternity. It still doesn't change the fact it's a perfect movie. You know?
But even with this movie, it was the same experience. Like, we both walked out of that theater and it was like, I'm exhausted. And that was, I'm pretty sure she said it to me first. And that's why. So even though Bo's experience was different, and I'm not saying that it's the same for everybody, right? I'm just saying that so far, since we've been doing this, I've been using Becky as my litmus test, and she's agreed with the consensus that we've been doing without, like, I didn't prep her on anything. I didn't say, hey, this is what everybody thought on this. It's like, this was the homework assignment. You know, Chase said, we're going to watch Peanut Butter Falcon. And, you know, we watched it and she's like, it was all right. Like, it was good. It was good. Like, I'd watch it again, but you know, it was right there. It's like right at that threshold. And, but with this one, it was the kind of the same. It was just, we walked out of the movie theater and it's like, I'm tired. And it hit that girlfriend factor for me. That's all I'm really getting at.
All right. With that being said, Drew is going to nominate the next movie that he believes is a perfect movie. So, Drew, give us the movie and any additional nudges, insights, any kind of mentality or things to look out for. Just prep us however you want.
It's spooky season. We're gonna get a horror.
It's spooky season, boys. I've got Alan. I'm sorry that your wife watching things with you for this next one. Spoiler alert: she's gonna vote no. All right, I've got three in mind, and so I need your guys' help to pick. The first one might be low-hanging fruit. We've spoken about it in the past, but like briefly, like we never discussed it. And so we got that one. It might be low-hanging fruit though. Just keep in mind. And I think everybody might have seen it, but it's time for a rewatch if you have watched it. Second movie is, I'm almost positive everybody's seen it. And but again, it's a good time for a rewatch. And the third one I don't think anybody has seen except for Callum. I wish he was here. And that one's The Roll of the Dice. And so,
hey, can you give us years like I did or something?
Yeah. Okay, Bo, to answer Bo's asking is option 3 a horror? And 2 of them are actually horrors. 2 out of the 3 are horrors.
Oh, help me if it's Bone Tomahawk. I'm not watching it. I refuse. I'm putting my foot down right now.
Hey, Brownie, it may or may not be, but you're not allowed to say that. This is a quest, and you are on this quest with us. So whatever movie I decide is the movie you will watch and participate in the conversations.
I have found ways where I can turn off your Plex access except for a single movie. And I tell you to watch that movie. You only have access to that one movie.
You wouldn't dare. You wouldn't dare, Chase. You wouldn't dare.
Can you imagine your kid turning on Plex and watching the Human Centipede?
Oh. I'll tell you right now, it is not. None of my 3 is Human Centipede. I could have chosen it.
I'm voting for option 3. If there's a chance I haven't seen it, that piques my interest, I think. But I'll let the other guys weigh in. But you know, because he watched it with Callum, that it's definitely a nasty, gross horror movie. So maybe you guys should vote for 1 or 2, just for all of us, for all of our sakes.
Yeah, I'm not watching this one with Mickey. Just saying.
Well, so Drew, I mean, like I took a risk. I mean, so I'd say throw it out there. Like if you think it's good, roll the dice, man.
Don't do the low-hanging fruit one, because my next one, I'm gonna do one that I think won't get a unanimous vote for perfection.
Yeah.
So
I also would say let's not be let's see, on the nose, like, I don't know, Last Samurai.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want to talk about low hanging fruit?
Hey, it was good. I
movie.
appreciated what Alan did, where it was like to look at it with a critical eye, because we had all seen it before, but I liked his approach of we had not looked at it with that critical eye. So Alan, to defend you, like I still think it was valuable to sit through and critique it with that is this perfection mentality. So I appreciated it.
All right, so there's 2017, and then there's 2022 and 2022.
Oh,
So, I think I'm just gonna go with my third option.
I know what 2017 is, right? And
Yeah.
That's Alan and I know.
Yeah, it was gonna be it. That was gonna be the one that everybody had seen, but Alan and Justin and I just watched it like a month ago.
It was actually phenomenal. First time seeing it, and
it's
We
good,
can-
right?
very good.
I think if at the very least we should have a discussion on it. We should have an entire podcast.
I've yet to see it. So I'll
Really?
watch it.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Part one
like
and
I
part
was.
two.
Oh,
You
can I-
haven't seen,
Part
I haven't
two.
seen either one.
Can I just tell a quick anecdote? This will take less than a minute. But I've seen a couple horror movies with Brownie. He does not do well with them. We went and saw, I forget what it was. It was an alien movie. We saw it in theaters. And I was sitting next to Brownie. And at one of the scariest parts, like when it's the climax at the end, it's nighttime and like the UFO is above the house and the people in the house are going like it's some like horrific scene. Brownie literally turned away. Like he's still looking at the theater screen. He turns away. He's like, no. He's like punching at the screen saying no in a public theater. It was the funniest thing I'd ever seen. Like he was so uncomfortable and scared out of his mind. He was like, but he didn't want to look away. He's like this. He's like, no. It was so great. So I know
Not for me.
I'm gonna struggle with this one.
Oh man, I'm so sorry. All right, the movie is called Talk to Me.
Never seen it.
All I want you to do is open a quick tab and just look at the movie poster. But make sure your camera's on. Like it's nothing crazy. Nothing crazy.
Drew, you know I live by myself in probably a haunted apartment, right? Like,
Yeah.
thanks.
You should have picked the low-hanging fruit. Everybody would have been in a way better mood at the end of it.
But
But
really, you think this one's perfect? Like you are nominating one you think is perfect?
So me and Callum watched it. Okay, so it's a horror movie. It's done. We're gonna talk all about it in a couple weeks. But as soon as we were done watching it, I like, as I was quivering, I looked at Callum and I was like, I think that was a perfect horror movie. And so it'll be fun to see if a perfect horror movie can live up to the standards of just perfect movie. And that's why it's a little bit of a roll of the dice. So
All right.
Talk to Me, 2022. And
Okay.
I think it was like an Australian film or something, but either way, you guys are gonna love it.
It's A24, so they are edgy, and I do like that they try to do something new. Like they did Civil War, and they've done a few others. So at least it's props for originality usually.
I would
Let
I would-
me offer you
Wait,
this.
so what's the name of the movie?
Talk to Me.
Talk to me. Brownie, let me offer you this olive branch. You're coming to visit my area tomorrow, so maybe we just watch it together and we'll turn on all the lights. We'll turn on
Yes.
all the lights and maybe Christmas music in the background.
Yes, do that. So one thing that me and Callum have talked about is
We've got cookies. You want some candy?
I don't want to play. I don't want to be on this one.
you've got to do it for me.
Can I opt out?
Here's the thing: is horror movies are made to be watched with people. Am I right, Justin and Alan? I said that before. It makes it so much better when you're with somebody. Also, horror is one of the only genres you can like
Talk.
chit chat through. You know, like you can yell at the screen and you're like, don't go in the haunted house. Oh, you know, because everybody's feeling that way. So everybody's thinking it. You're just saying, you guys are gonna have a great time, especially if you watch with other people. Alan, good luck.
Watch it by yourself.
All right. Hey, maybe we could do a
Alan?
watch party. Maybe we could all FaceTime.
Then we
each other.
can do a watch party.
Yeah. There we go.
So
and we can all
That
experience
is,
it together.
I think that is a feature on Plex where we can set up a watch together.
Perfect.
That'd be cool.
And then we can send Brownie to the bathroom. Like, hey, Brownie, you've been drinking a little too much. You want to go to the bathroom real fast?
And no turning on the light. All right.
So yourself alone.
So we've got our movie for next time. It's called Talk to Me. It's a nomination from Drew. So let's go handle this homework assignment. If we do want to watch it together in a watch party, just we'll text each other and coordinate that. But very excited to watch that. And with that, we will wrap up this episode on the 1917 Perfect Movie Quest. It achieved perfection. Congratulations, Brownie. On to the next. Have a good night, gents.
Later, boys.
See you.
Thank-